We're recording. Hi kids, welcome to Hearts Like Kids, where kids shine bright. We are going to have another 2 chapters in one of my favorite books. Yay! I love Charlotte's book, Broken Twigs, and I am so excited to have her share another 2 chapters here on Hearts Like Kids Story Time. Hi, Charlotte, and welcome to Hearts Like Kids Story Time.
It's exciting to be here again.
Awesome. I am so excited to find out what happens in the next 2 chapters.
Oh dear, dear, dear. Oh,
all
Twigs,
right,
what have you done?
Let's see what mischief Twigs can get into this time.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, we left Twigs hiding on a branch, spying on the tooth fairies, or waiting to spy on the tooth fairies, having scared Penelope, having stolen some fruit and nuts from the pantry, having hurt poor old fairy Fabian, and now still not happy with the amount of chaos she's created. She's now sitting ready to spy on the tooth fairies. So let's see how she gets on. So chapter 4 is called Is Revenge Best Served Cold? As the afternoon sun shone overhead, Twigs began to feel drowsy, and with the soothing chirping of the birds seeming like a lullaby, she found her eyelids getting heavier and heavier. Just when she was about to drift off into a pleasant afternoon nap, she heard Happy chatting down below. Jumping up, she almost clapped her hands with glee. Time for some espionage. Glimpsing downwards towards the greenery, she watched as tooth fairies appeared from amongst the adjacent trees. Carrying their latest hoard from the previous night's excursions, they approached a colossal machine in the centre of the glade. Made from items discarded by humans, the tooth grinder had a big tilted plastic funnel at one end, which was reached by standing on a little wooden ladder. This was the entry point for the teeth. The funnel was connected to a long tubular section made from the segment of a garden hose pipe, which fed the teeth into the grinding compartment. This part of the machine was made from an old wooden wine barrel that had 3 metal strips along its girth. On top of the barrel was an open hatch where a tooth fairy or 2 would be positioned. Their job was to pour in a secret liquid potion contained in a bronzed conch seashell. And there's the picture of the grinding machine.
Ah, there we go.
At the other end, the enchanted dust then poured out via another piece of hose pipe into a huge hole in the ground, which led to the Fey Mines. Twigs thought she would never tire of the sight of the fairy dust cascading down into the hole like a gorgeous iridescent waterfall. It was breathtaking. She had no idea how the teeth were ground down inside the barrel, or the components which made this possible, for she'd not managed to breach that secret yet. Nor did she know the ingredients of the magical potion, but it was something she was determined to discover. Several tooth fairies used small barrows to dump bags of collected teeth at the base of the entry chute, while the others claimed their positions alongside or on top of the great machine. Once everyone was in place, the chief tooth fairy pressed her thumbprint to a small oval mother-of-pearl disc on the barrel's side. As the machine whirred to life, one of the fairies climbed the little ladder, and several more began to pass up to him, tooth after tooth after tooth. He tossed them into the funnel, and grinding soon began. Twigs's eyes travelled along to where the fairies were waiting with a secret potion on top of the barrel. Her breath hitched, and she peered forwards while squinting. "Ooh, perfect! Who do we have here?" she chuckled as she tapped her fingertips together happily. She'd spotted Clara. A few weeks earlier, this honest and good fairy had reported Twigs to the Fairy Queen for stealing some stores from the honeybees' hives. Of course, it was true, but Twigs thought Clara should have minded her own business. She was a meddling pest, and Twigs was adamant she would get her own back on her. I mean, why should she care if the bees have enough honey to feed themselves through the winter? I don't care, she huffed as she felt the anger creeping up inside her again. The revengeful fairy watched while Clara chatted to her companion as she began to get ready to pour the special transparent liquid into the hatch opening. Scanning the area behind the machine, Twig spotted an old beech tree, which was nearer to Clara than the tree where she was perched. That would make a great hiding place until she figured out how she was going to punish her rival. She knew she was spiteful and mean, but she felt justified in her feelings, and this was why she never looked to form any kind of relationship with any fae in the forest. She couldn't trust them. She flew quickly along the treetops, and once at the beech tree, half in the shadows of the leaves, she knew she couldn't be seen. A genius idea presented itself to her, and she quickly reached into her bag and pulled out the large blackberry she'd been saving. Wasting no time, she aimed the fruit at Clara's back just as the unsuspecting fairy was tilting the shell over the hatch. Twigs let the fruit fly. It soared through the air and found its target beautifully. As the blackberry exploded all over her, Clara let out a high squeal. Twigs took great delight in seeing that the purple juice had stained Clara's hair and clothes. Good. But then, as Clara struggled to keep her balance, which had been compromised through the impact of the missile, she involuntarily let go of the big potion-containing shell. It fell down, 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 through the hatch and into the darkness of the machine below. So, that's the end of chapter 4. See, Twigs?
Oh boy.
Oh boy. So, chapter 5.
Now what's going to
Twigs.
happen?
Well, the chapter's called Twigs Causes Chaos.
It sounds chaos.
It's nothing yet, you wait. Twigs gasped and ran forward on the branch from where she had thrown the berry projectile. She hadn't thought the plan through very well at all. She had simply meant to give Clara a fright. Now, though, she couldn't imagine that a big shell falling into that section of the machine would do it any good at all. If it had gone through the funnel with the teeth, then maybe. As she began to panic, a low rumbling noise rose from the great machine. It began to splutter and to lurch, to hiss and to groan, and the horrified tooth fairies all froze in shock. Wispy tendrils of smoke began to ooze from new cracks in the barrel's sides, and the frantic workers ran for cover. Clara was inconsolable when her companion pulled her to safety from the top of the machine, manoeuvring her past the tree line into the protection of the shrubbery. A deafening din echoed through the trees, signalling the end of the great machine. Twigs watched wide-eyed as it exploded. Tons of fairy dust shot into the air to create a silvery fog, which was carried on the spiraling breeze, and nuts and bolts whizzed dangerously outwards in all directions. So there is the machine exploding.
Oh, that
dear.
is toast, I think.
Absolutely.
Uh-oh.
Then she heard crackling. Reluctant to see what was happening, she glanced back at the machine through the haze and saw hungry flames growing taller and taller. Before long, the surrounding trees had caught fire, including the one where she was still standing. Desperate to escape, she flew up into the air and sped away as fast as she could without a backward glance. Chaos. That was the only word to describe it. Fae folk flew with buckets of water, trying to put out the fire and to dampen down the blinding dust. Dragonflies also zoomed here and there, dropping water bombs from great heights to douse the flames. Within minutes, the whole of Fairy Forest was rushing about trying to save their homes. Buildings collapsed all around, and her hard-earned possessions were destroyed. Nurse fairies battled valiantly to remove their patients who were bedbound, even when it meant their own homes and possessions were left undefended and at the mercy of the fire. Panicked voices could be heard calling out for missing family members, and small babies were heard screaming for absent parents. Those too young or too old to flee the flames were carried to safety by relations and neighbours, who then returned to help wherever they could. Worker fairies began to dig trenches ahead of the flames in an attempt to halt their advance. Seasonal fairies evacuated the beehives as best they could, relocating the colonies to another, safer part of the forest. Everyone pulled together to try and save their community. That is, everyone except the very fairy who had created this disaster. Twigs had found welcome shelter some miles away in a new, dark cave, where she now sat despondently with her head in her hands. She had wanted to return to her safe place, but the area in which it was situated had already been engulfed by the fire. How much trouble she'd be in now. She didn't dare think about it, as this time she wasn't under any illusion that she could talk her way out of the predicament she was now in. Groaning, she hoped that the Fairy Queen would retain her soft-heartedness and maybe punish her with extra duties. Maybe she'd be reassigned to work under the Queen's watchful eye instead. Or maybe, just maybe, no one would survive the fire, and then she wouldn't have to be answerable to anyone.
Oh,
Twigs.
boy.
Twigs.
I know there's a few kids out there that are going, just one more chapter, one more.
Next time.
Next time. So come back next week and find out what happened to Twigs. Does she get punished? And what's next? Thank you so much. I can't wait to find out what happens on Hearts Like Kids next week. See you then. Bye.